Hi, my name is Eric Knudsen with Fence Genius. Thank you for watching our video and welcome back to another episode of our real-time time studies producing fence panels in our Fence Genius production pod using the version 2.0 build rack. Now, in our first episode of the real-time time studies, we built this fence panel. In fact, this is the fence panel right here after I trimmed the bottom off. You could see the video that I made doing the time study for this panel right here if you want to watch it later. I'll also put a tag at the end of the video so you can click it there. You can also see the amount of time it took to build this panel right here. Now, the big question is, and the thing that we keep trying to get across to everybody is, will consumers buy other styles of product in the way of fence panels if they're available to them at a marginal cost? By that I mean, if I add a horizontal lattice to this and it follows the contour of the land, that's something very difficult for a typical crew to do on site. And so most of the time when I talk to contractors and I ask them, well, what would you charge to do something like that? They kind of hem and say, you know, I'd probably have to pad my bid by 50 or 70% just because my crew isn't just able to do it, and I might even have to be on the job site myself to make it happen. Well, the thing is, in production pods, we can make all kinds of different fence panels, and the software drives the process with the fabricator. The fabricator himself or herself doesn't need to know how to build those products. They just follow the step-by-step workflow. So in episode 2, we built basically this same panel, but it was a solid panel. It was all 5.5-inch boards. There was no pattern. And it was a 2-rail, 2-trim instead of a 3-rail, 3-trim. And it took this much time. Now, if it's only a small marginal amount of time in the fabrication part itself to change the style that much. And at the end of the day, whenever you actually charge the customer for the installed fence, the fabrication labor aspect of it might be in the range of 10 to 20% of the cost. So if that 10 to 20% only changes marginally, then the end cost only changes marginally. Now you obviously have some more material to build the horizontal lattice. I mean, right now, this system was $47.82. If we change to the horizontal lattice to see what it costs, it's at $5,204.81. Now we have some labor cost change that's going to come into the picture. And that's what I want to do in this video, is I want to take this panel, I'm going to keep this time study that we've already done on it, and all I'm going to do is time the process of cutting the lattice and putting the lattice on. And then I'll give a new time study for this entire panel with lattice on it. So let's get started. So if we go to the software here and we go ahead and work our way into the pre-manufacturing workflow, then you're going to see as we set up the settings for the job, we have to go ahead and set up the build rack number 2. I'm going to turn off the measuring mark for horizontal, and I'm going to turn on the 2 saws. I'll select that as my settings. Now as I come into the pre-manufacturing workflow, if I was doing this entire job, it would be nesting all my short rails together and making recommendations of how to nest those, and the same thing with the caps. Now if I had started the entire lattice job as one job, it would have asked me in the beginning to prepare the lath for the lattice, and it would make recommendations out of which are the best boards to use to yield the lath. I'm only building one panel for this job. That's panel 11. So I'm not going to obviously pre-rip all these things, but these are the pieces I'm going to need. I'm going to need 2 pieces at 1.5 inches and 2 pieces at 3 inches. Okay, so I'm going to get 2 pieces of 1x6 by 8, 5/8 by 5.5 by 8. I've selected those specifically for lattice, and I'm going to go ahead and get set up to rip those. So let's start the clock now. I'm going to be walking out to get the material. All right, I'm bringing the material in. I'm going to turn on my dust collector just because this is going to be a lot more dust. So I'm going to pull out my saw. I'm going to lock it into position. It's going to be a little bit tight with this panel in the way. I'm going to set for the 1.5 inches. Okay, so I've cut my 2 pieces at 1.5 inches, 2 pieces at 3 inches. That's the amount of time that it took to do that, including bringing the material in. So the next step now is going to be using the workflow to cut these to the right dimension. Okay, let's go ahead and start the clock. We'll start in on this. We've got 2 at 1.5 inches, 2 at 3. Now I have to go to the correct panel, and this is something that I would have already been there, but I'm not there because I'm only doing the one panel. So I'm here now. I just spent that time getting there. But it's telling me to go to the -7.5, 0. Now with the lattice, I can cut them all at one time if I want to. But I'm going to cut in two lifts because I've got this backrest off. I always want to be against the backrest. So I get down near the end. I cut it. I don't need to label them because I know what they are. And I say next. Now the other end, I'm going to mark this at 92 5/8. And I just have to make sure that this didn't slide down here, and it didn't. So 92 5/8 is my mark. And it's going to be on my right saw. Now keep in mind, if I was doing this as part of my job, it would already be set because I would have just cut the trim. So this is adding time that wouldn't otherwise be there. Because I'm trying to do it after the fact. So that's 2 of them. Now I can do the other 2. I don't even need to look at the dimensions because the lattice is all going to be the same. I've got to, when I'm cutting 2 at a time, I have to keep them tightly together so they get cut the same, of course. Okay, so now I've got my 4 pieces of lattice, or my lath, you would call it. It's right there in the ready. Now I'm going to bring the panel over here because I have to put the lath on this side. Okay, so I am ready to install the lath now. I just need to get myself the right tool. I'm going to be using my small narrow crown staple gun. I prefer to use stainless staples when I can. And so there's going to be 1 piece of lath on the bottom, 1 piece of lath on the top. Now to keep these flush, I can just take a little piece of scrap and tack it on there. Now I can put this flush. And hopefully don't put an excessive amount of staples in. This is perfect on this end. Now this top one. Yep, that's nice. Now the spacing is 1 inch. So, okay, I got myself a couple little blocks. If I had been using the normal method, I would have put layout marks on the boards as I installed them, but I don't really need them in this case. So I'm again going to put a couple neatly placed staples. And now I can do the top one, same way. So I'm just going to put a block. Now again, if you use the board layout method, this would have been marked on the boards as part of that process. All right, so the last thing I need to do is just pull off my little temporary brace. And I can pull out these nails, these little staples. I don't have my pliers right here, but and I can just cut these little staples. I'll go ahead and pound them in. And that's that's it. That's what it takes to make that happen. So now I will get this over here just so you can see the other side. And so now you can see how much added time it takes to get the materials, to rip the lath, and to cut the lath, and then to install the lath. Now, keep in mind, this took a lot of extra time because if you were doing a whole fence system, you would have ripped it all together, you would have cut a lot of it all together, you would have marked your boards, you wouldn't have been using a little tiny block of wood as a spacer, and it would have been done as part of the process. So anyway, you can see that the marginal difference in cost to build a horizontal lattice top fence system like this, with this high quality, thick lath, is not that much more than the cost of building just a solid 2-rail plain old panel. So by going through this exercise, hopefully you're seeing that, you know, we can offer the customer more choice, and that choice doesn't have to cost a lot more money. And what that will hopefully translate into is more homeowners that decide that they want to put in a fence instead of renovating their bathroom. And that means more volume for the entire fence industry. If we can get this kind of option out there to a wider audience, the more people out there that see it, the more fence boards we sell, the more fences we install, and there's plenty of pent-up demand out there. You see fences falling down everywhere. But again, I think that most of those are because people look at it and say, well, it looks bad, but all I get is the same thing that looks new. If they can instead say, it looks terrible, I can get something like this instead, it's my feeling that they're going to be more likely to want to do the fence project in the first place. Anyway, keep watching the videos. Happy fence building.